Steve Bentley here and Off-Road Grind, and today we are going to be starting on this Honda Element. Actually, I've got my awning up because it is hot as blazes here in Texas. That sun is wicked. It's been spending a month up in Colorado and it was awesome up there. The humidity is like 10% during the day. I don't know what it is here, but it is way higher than that. So anyways, today we're going to be working on this Honda Element. We're going to be building a Swingout tire carrier. Going to be pulling this bumper cover off, putting the mount for the hinge bracket into the frame up in here. Hinge post is going to come up out here, and then what we'll be doing is building out the tire carrier across the back. Tire is going to sit up around here somewhere, so it's going to be a little higher off the hinge than normal, but the bumper on this is pretty low. And what we also want to do is get a table. I've got a pre-built table that I'm going to riv nut into the swing arm itself, make some brackets for it, but that's what it's going to look like. And this will be my first build on a Honda Element for sure. First build on a Honda actually, so looking forward to this. Here we go. Okay, the bumper cover is off. Very straightforward. We got to take the mud flap off. A couple of Phillips screws in here, and there's one here, one up here, one over there, and then one up inside here somewhere. I think up in here. Got to get those out on each side, and then this inner plastic cover here is the tricky part here. If you want to get it all off in one piece, it's just clipped in up here on each side. But what you want to do is those little fins on this sucker here, these guys here, that one was already broken unfortunately, but you see these guys in here, and they pop into these little grooves here, and you just gotta squeeze them in. So once you get that figured out, it's not so bad. Okay, so let's get on the tire carrier. Hinge post first. It's gonna go down in here somewhere. I'm having a feeling I'm gonna cap the end of that frame and weld the plate probably 3/6 inch steel to that, and then weld the tire hinge post off that. That's what I'm thinking, because we've got a bunch of bolts up in here for the tow hitch that are kind of blocking out this frame. I don't want to mess with this stuff here. Another option is this is going to be pretty solid into the truck, so we can cap that with some steel and then weld the bracket in off here and come up to the side here. Let's give it a better angle. So cap it, put a tube here, and then a vertical post up to here, and then weld the hinge onto the front of that. So I wanted to get this bumper cover off today so I could take a look at that, and it's getting close to the end of the day, so I will pack it up. But I wanted to have this open so I could look at it and think about it. So that's my plan so far. I might change that. Try not to mess too much with the rigidity thing. The other option would be to shave this down a little bit here and then weld a plate in onto the frame and out onto there. So I'm going to do one of the two. Either just cap that with a plate of steel and then weld the bracket onto that, or connect this whole thing together with a plate. I almost want to go with the first option because that bumper is designed to be removed, and if I weld everything together, that kind of negates that option for him down the road if somebody crunches into his bumper. Anyways, I'll think about that. Okay, here we go. Let's get started on this build. What we're going to do here first is, I think this is going to be pretty solid for attaching the end of the hinge bracket. And what we'll do is build the hinge bracket out from here, get a post up in here, then behind the taillight panel here, kind of up in here, and then weld the hinge onto the front of that like the back of the hinge bracket support. So you'll see that hinge is coming in later today, so we'll get that on there. But right now though, what I want to do is figure out where I'm going to put the swing arm. I've got I'm going to need about 2 inches in between the back of the tire post and the back of the truck here for the table. And so we're going to have the hinge swing arm, or the tire swing arm, out here a couple inches, so we've got a little bit of a gap in behind there. And then what we'll do is get that all tied into the hinge body here. I think that's going to work out pretty good. So the hinge post is going to be a 3x2 rectangular tube. We'll put the hinge on top of that, and that should build it out the appropriate distance that we need for the table to fit in between the tire post and the back of the door there. Just going to take a little template here of the end of this bumper cover, and then I've got some 3/16 inch steel. I'm either going to use this or 10 gauge. This is about, looks like 12 gauge or so. Obviously less than 1/8 of an inch, so I don't want to go too thick on the plate that I go through, because to get this burned in and welded properly to this, I don't want to melt the tubing. So I wouldn't go any bigger than 3/16. I might go down to a 10 gauge as well, but right now I'm just going to get the template. So I'm just getting started, so my hands aren't that dirty, but normally what you can just do is take a little form there and just put your paper over top of it and just scrunch it in, and either the dirt on your hands or just the creasing of the paper is going to give you a pretty good template. And we're just going to cut that out, and then cut it out a little bit bigger, maybe 1/8 of an inch or so around the crease here. And then we're going to use that as a template to cut the steel out. It's just going to go a little bit bigger than this, and we're going to weld in mainly from in behind it. So we're going to have a bit of a collar around the frame here. We got the room over there on the truck to do that. So let me cut this out, get the steel all cut out, and then we'll come on back and we're welding that in. Okay, we're getting started on the plates. We've got this. I'm going to sand this down a little bit more later, but right now we're just going to put this onto the end of the bumper, tack it into place, and then weld it up. Okay, pop this back on for now so we can start working on the bracket. This is a little bit more than 3x2, so we're gonna put a 3x2 rectangular tube bracket in here, and a post up here for the actual hinge, which is coming today. I wish it was here now. Anyways, when you're putting this bumper back on though, there's, as you can see, the holes, they slide a little bit. There's options for left, right. So just make sure you've got it back in the middle of where the bolt holes or the nut marks were. You can see that. And the reason being is your bumper cover clips into these little dashes here, these cutouts. So you want to make sure that it actually fits back on your truck the way you took it off. So just keep that in mind and make sure you've got that plugged in properly as well. So, and then we've got some little clips here that the cover is going to fit into, so we'll get all that dialed in later. But for now, let's start working on the bracket and bringing that hinge body out to where we want it to be. keeping in mind that if you're going to put a table in here, you're going to need to have a little bit of a gap. So the hinge is going to have to be further out for everything to fit. Now there's a couple of options too for doing your swing arm. You can do straight across, which is what I'm going to try and do. However, we got a pretty good curve here, and because I'm going to try and get the swing arm out further to accommodate the table in here, I might actually have the post just straight up close to the body of the vehicle here, and then angle the swing arm out a little bit, and I'll show you. If I do it that way, I'll show you how that obviously works out as well. Just got to take a couple of angles, cut a little piece out of the swing arm, re-weld it, and that'll give us the right position that we're looking for. Okay, while we're waiting for that hinge assembly to come, let's work on the tire plate. So same thing, I just took the wheel off that he wants to put on the back. Eventually it's the size, so I'll make the tire plate to fit that. And again, just took some paper, cut out the pattern. Tripod not falling over here. There we go. Just cut out some paper, put it on the back of the tire, rubbed it out. Got the circles where the lug holes are going to be. And the reason I do it this way is because if you read up online, it'll say it's a 5 by 4.5 or 114.3 millimeters. I don't get 114.3. If I do the distance between here, I get about 110. And there's the middle of the bolt hole there. And if I take this right to the bolt pattern itself on the wheel or on the rim, I get 110 is the distance between the center of the holes for the opposing holes here. Anywhere I go along there. So I am going to go with 110 because that's what I'm going to make the plate to fit the actual wheel that he's got here. So let's do that. So the way I do that, I'll show you, but I'm going to explain it first. Sorry about the fan noise. It is hot here. I've got that fan here. I'm going to melt. So I've got a 1/4 inch plate of steel here. I'm going to touch this up later once I get it all drilled out. But what I'm going to do is take the bolt pattern that I want to use. So I'm going to put 3 lug bolts on the plate here. Like that. And I'm going to drill the hole slightly oversized so that when I put the lug bolt in, it can float around a little bit. And you'll see what I'm going to do is drill the hole slightly oversized so the bolts float a little, and then I'm going to put them on the wheel with the nuts. Got some open-ended cone nuts here, and this is a M12 by 1.5 pitch thread. And what I'm going to do then is tighten this plate to the wheel and then tack weld the bolts in place where they are that fit perfectly straight on the actual plate. So then when I take this off, I weld it on, I can just fit the tire right on it. So I'll show you how that all works. That's pretty good. I like that. So we got about a millimeter or 2 on either side to give it some float, and then once we put the nuts in and put it onto the tire or the wheel, it'll position themselves properly in the hole, and then we'll weld it in. We'll do that with the other 2, and we'll be good to go. So here's the plate all drilled out. So let's put this tire in place. So this is obviously going to be on the tire carrier itself, and the wheel is going to fit onto this plate. So we're going to push those 2 there like that, and then just get some of these nuts. there. So let's see how that looks. These two look good. This one is bent over a little bit, so we're going to shift that switch. Yeah, I like the way those fit. Let's just loosen this a bit. There we go, I like that. You can see that. So everything's pretty much straight out. This bottom right one here, looks like I'm gonna move that one up a bit. And once I'm happy with how they're in place, I'm just gonna put a tack holder in the back, take the nuts off, pull the plate off the back of the wheel so I'm not welding that on while it's on the aluminum. Don't overheat anything. And then let that cool. And wait until it's ready to go on the tar carrier. If that's all done, we'll let that cool down and sand it down a bit. I think I am happy with that. And the hinge body should be here soon, and we can get that all put together for the swing arm, and it's coming along nice. The fan sound here was just too loud. I couldn't hear what I was saying, but basically I'm cutting the end of that tubing at 45 degrees so it can go onto the plate that we welded to the end of the bumper. And then we're going to cut out two 15-degree sections, so a bit of a pie. So each line's 15 degrees to the face of the tubing there. So we're going to cut out that little piece all the way around. So we create a V in there, and you'll see that in a bit. Next clip, and that's going to give us the angle we need to weld the hinge body onto that bracket. Welding on some end caps here for the top and head. Okay, I snuck the top of this post here down a little bit. I cut it at 9, but I dropped it down to 8 1/4. That didn't need to be quite as high, so we're just going to cap that now, get that done. A lot easier doing it now before we get it on the welded onto the truck. That's the next step, popping this on and getting that hinge attached to here so we can start building out the swing arm. Next step, we're just going to pop that onto the bumper, tack it in for now, make sure we like it, and then tack the hinge body on, start building out the swing arm. I always just tack it on in case we have to rack the hinge body a little bit to level out the swing arm, because once we start welding things onto the swing arm, it tends to change the angles and height. I like it. Okay, so we'll pop that off. I'm actually going to leave it. I'll pop it off later to do the final welding of everything. It's just a lot easier than messing around. We got the opportunity to take this bumper off. We might as well do it. On some other vehicles there I do a lot of work on. It's all a frame, body on frame construction, so that frame is all welded together, so I can't take it off like I can take this piece off. So I'm going to pop a couple more tacks in there, and then because we're going to start putting the swing arm on here, I don't want these to pop off, so we'll do that and then start building out the swing arm. Okay, let's get this hinge actually welded in here. So for the height, you want to make sure the bottom bolt here is above the bumper cover, so we're going to jack this right to the very top. Just center it a little bit. Okay, perfect. So relative to the bumper, we're exactly right on here, perpendicular to the top of the bumper cover there, or the top of the bumper frame, I guess. So now I'm going to tack this into place, and then what we'll do is start building out the swing arm, and if we have to adjust it, we can cut some of these tacks, just rack it a little bit, get the swing arm in the right position. But a little change here makes a big difference at the other end. Let's check it again. Perfect. So we're exactly perpendicular with the hinge body, at least. Yeah, same there. To the top of the bumper frame there. So now we can start building out the swing arm. So what I'm going to do is figure out, okay, how far do I want that over? Cut the length of that off, and then we're going to cope the end of the swing arm bar to go on to this hinge cylinder. So I'm going to take this off and clean it up a little bit, get that scale off, and then weld the end of the swing arm onto here, and then start leveling things out. Let's get that done. Okay, so what we're going to do now is cope the end of the swing arm, and find, if you're going to use tubing like this, it's going to have likely a weld seam on it. Try and get that to face the inside of the vehicle so it's not pointing out in the back. Depending on what coating you use, you might see that seam. So remember that. So we're going to point that to the inside. Now what we want to do is cut out or cope the end of the swing arm to fit onto this hinge body. And these are pretty beefy hinges here from 4X Innovations. Really good system, all complete. And I think they're about $138 or something for the hinge, the body, and the pin. So use a sharp Sharpie, and I don't know if you can see that. Spin this around. But don't go right to the end or the edge of the actual tubing. What you want to do is have it so that you don't have the end of the cylinder here right at the edge. You want to bring it back a little bit so that you've got a bit of meat on the wall of the tubing and it's not coming down to a super fine point. And that way you can fill that in a little easier with the weld. So we're going to do that on the other side as well. So we're going to pull the hinge back and try to make sure that gap is pretty consistent on each side. About 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/32. And do two things. Mark the hinge right before it crosses the end of the tubing, and then mark the tubing. And that way we can cope that out. But we'll see, this is the top, just to remind myself that the seam is that way. And now what we want to do is the same thing on the other side. And the reason we're going to mark the hinge body itself is so that we can line that up on each side as well a little bit more effectively. There we go. And then get the same gap on each side. And I'll show you how we're gonna test to make sure that we got that level. So now what we're gonna do is just cope that out. So we're gonna just take some little slices out and then do angles. And then if we need to, get the flap disc in there and sand that out. So let me get my stuff, we'll knock that out and then fit the hinge up there, and we'll show you how once the hinge is jammed into both of these, then we'll hold this up here and see if it's level or not. Let me get my equipment and I'll be right back. Okay, I would cut this to length after you've done this. Let's assume we screw this up and you have to redo it. You don't want to cut it to length and then do this, and then you just ruin that piece of tubing. So I would do the coping first. Pretty simple though. So let's dive into it. You can decide if you want to go up just to the line or into it. Just be consistent on either side. We'll use a sander to smooth this out, even them out, and then take these inside edges off. So let's see if you can see that. We got some work to do still. So I can tell from looking at it that this is a little different shape than this. On this side, this is a little far in, and on the bottom, it's the other side. And so it's not really sitting square as far as I'm concerned. So I got a gap on the bottom over here and a gap on the top over here. So I'm gonna start by just shaving this back a little bit. And you also want to see is it the edges, and it's mainly this bottom edge here. This one here on that side. So let's take that down a bit. Okay, we're getting pretty close there. So hot here. Woo. So I'm liking that. Now what we want to do is make sure we got it square, so it's level, and I'm pretty happy with that. Looks like it could go in a little bit more at the bottom, which makes sense because we got a bit of a gap here. So let's take a look at that. Interesting. Okay, so that's good there. I think it's still just these edges need to get pushed out a little to make sense. That was a good sound. Boom. I like that too. That's pretty cool. Sorry? Oh yeah, it's really nice.
You know about that.
Yeah, I was using a sander before. Oh, it took forever. It didn't use a very good. Didn't do a good job. Oh god. Hey, that would have been really good.
Yeah. Because they had a lot of rust spots on the 3x3 angle.
Well, until I go up to Colorado next summer, it'll be up there. So anytime you need to use it, let me know. Okay, so we're all good. We have to stop there and take a look at the rain clouds that we're coming. Pretty excited. It hasn't rained here since July 6th, and it's August 15th now. So anyway, so what we've got here is coping. It's all done. This is perpendicular, so we got our square, and this is jammed in there. That's nice and perpendicular to the thing. We want that to be the case because if we put this on and it's askew, once we lock it into the hinge body, okay, the lens might keep fogging up a bit here. I had to put my phone in the fridge because it was overheated. However, so what we got here, we got the swing arm set up. Is it the screen all foggy or is it the lens? I think it's the lens. So let me warm up the lens so it's not as foggy. So I got the swing arm here, and I think where the phone was crapping out before because of the heat was the coping on here. So we've got this all into place. Got it leveled. So again, we're about 2 degrees off, but so is the bumper itself. And so we want to recreate that, get this all squared into place, and then tack weld that swing arm in. I'm probably going to put a gusset in here. And it's about to rain. It's about 5 o'clock. I'm exhausted from the heat, so I'm probably going to go in after this. But I'm just going to tack this into place because I got it all set up. Had to put a little bit of paper in there. But this is the post I'm actually going to use for the tire carrier. It's going to go up here. And then we'll be able to put the brackets for the table off that, and then some supports to get the tire post dialed in nicely. So might bring this in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure it was long enough. I'm thinking the tire post is going to go here, and we're going to have some angled side supports that are probably going to be about 1 foot long. So we'll get that all into place. But let's couple of tacks in here, and then we're done for the day. Checking the angle, making sure nothing's moving around. And then next up is you can do a couple things. You can either pop the latch block in. Probably going to come back a little bit here. It'd be nice if I can get it right over the hitch. And then we can start working on the tire post and supports, and then the neck and the table mount, and get all that put in together. I'm sure I can get that. Pretty close to 2, 1.9. So I think that's good. We'll shut it down for the day and get this finished off tomorrow. Pretty happy with what we got done there on a first time element build for a tire carrier. So yeah, let's rock it out tomorrow morning. Steve here, day 2, and we're rocking along here. And we got the tire post in for the tire carrier, and pop that on. Had a little, so if you're going to be welding this, what you want to do is make sure you just get this squared up to the other tube and flush. So I just put a piece of metal in there, clamp it in, and it just gives me a nice level, even surface. So what we're going to do here is I've got the table that I want to put on here, but I'm going to put that framing in behind this post. Normally I'd make the table, but I only have a day and a bit to get going on this. So I purchased a table, and it's just going to fit right in there, but we need to make some brackets for holding the table frame, and I'm just trying to decide how I want to incorporate those into the support for the tire post. Normally I'd put some angled tire supports in, just down in here. And the tire, center of the tire is probably going to come out here. We're going to have the neck of the tire carrier coming out here. But I just extended this up so that we can attach the table frame to the top here, back into the back as well. And then I'm trying to decide how I want to do the supports here. I'd like to have some come out here and down, so I might just do a big square frame that comes down and reattach the table frame to that. What I'm thinking of doing is just adding some more 2-inch tubing. So I'm thinking just a big frame here for the table, and that'll give me support for the tire carrier as well. So I think I'm going to go that route. Let's do a little catch up here. I didn't videotape a lot of this because it's just a lot of finagling around and figuring things out and how we're going to fit it all together. But I'm about to work on the support frame for the tire post and then build out the neck and put the tire plate on. But first I want to get the frame going for the table, get that done. But here for the end of the swing arm, so this is about, I think, 30.5 inches long from the hinge. It's going to be about 21 inches high. I'm going to put the frame across on top so I don't have to cap the top of it. But what we've just done here is for the latch area, I've just got a little catch on the back here that hooks over this lip. I got to weld all this in, so oop, bang. And that's just closing out on the hinge body there. So what I'm going to do is finish welding the back of this once I take the bumper off. But that catch, obviously the latch comes in here, but there's a catch that pops over top of this and stops this from sliding out. So this is the block that pulls it in, so I'll show you how that all works. And it's all just specific for the measurements that you decide, so it doesn't really matter what I do. But so that's gonna just lift up a smidge, lock down on there, and when this clamps in, I don't have it tightened up yet, but when that clamps in there, that's gonna lock it down really, oh, that's hot. It's gonna lock it down really good. So here, let's tighten this up a little bit more. Doesn't take much once it's close. Nope, a bit more. Clink. And then that'll just lock in really nice and tight to the bumper. This isn't bolted in on this side yet. But that's how it kind of looks. And we're just going to weld all this out as well with the latches and such. So now let's do the tire carrier and the table frame. Oh man, it's hot out here. Woo-wee. Okay, we got the frame for the support for the tire, but it's also going to double as the frame for the table. So I gotta weld that together a little bit more. Normally I would just have wherever the tire post is going to be, or the neck, I'm going to have a little below that some diagonal supports, but this is going to work just fine. So now we're going to put the tire or wheel plate on there, and it's going to go right in the middle there where that little mark is. And it's a 28-inch wheel, so I want to make sure that the bottom of the wheel is above here, so it doesn't interfere with the bumper or any license plate that we're going to be putting on. We're going to put a little license plate light in here. So let's get that neck going, and I'm going to show you how to measure the back space, because that's important to figure out the length of the neck. So what we're going to do is just take a straight edge here, put it up against the tire, as you can see, and then just put the ruler on the back plate. That's going to go up against your tire plate, and you can see we're at 6.5 inches. So this tire plate that we made earlier is going to go like so. like this. And so we're at 6.5 inches. So we're going to do a little bit of math here. So it's going to go on there. We're going to put the 2x2 tubing up in the middle here. This is a 1/4 of an inch plate. So if we put let's say we want a 1 inch gap between the wheel, the back of the wheel here, and the framing of the tire. So what we want to do is go, okay, 6.5 inches. If we want a 1 inch space, that's going to be 7.5 inches from the frame here to get the wheel back out there. Plus we've got a 1/4 of an inch plate, so we need to go 7 1/4 inches. And this is probably going to be a little short. Oh, check it out! Piece of cut off that I have, and it's actually the perfect length. So that is great. So if we put the tire plate on here, and that pushes the wheel out 7.5 inches from the framing here, and this 6.5 inch depth is going to give us a 1 inch gap to here. So I think we are good. So we just need to make sure that's square. What I find is it's always better to weld this onto the plate first, and then weld that onto and then weld the assembly onto the post. If you weld this on first and then try and get this on later, it's just a pain in the butt. It's so much easier to just take this, make sure that's exactly how you want it, and then square it up and all, and then put that on there. So now we just want to decide, okay, what orientation do we want? Is the single bolt going to be up, or is it going to be down? So we'll have to decide on that. Figure out how we want that, and then we're going to put that in place, weld it in, and then weld this to the post, and then we're going to put a little gusset in there for support, just to help it out a little bit. So let's get a little grid going here to make sure that we're going to get this on properly and it's aligned nicely. Let's take this inside and get that welded on. A little less breezy in there. Okay, we just want to make sure this is squared up to that grid that we put on earlier if it's possible. It's just going to make it a lot easier for us to get a better position later when we're trying to get it all into place, and we don't want it to be skewed over one way or the other. Let me just get that all welded in right now, but I'm just gonna put some big thick weld tacks in there. Let's get it back on the truck, put the tire on, make sure everything is good before we do the final weld. Well, good morning. The next day, we got this all completed late last night and coated. So we've got the latch system here, hinge body. We really like to steel stainless steel spray. Works really well. And then the actual swing arm itself. So we got a coat on last night and another coat on this morning. So as we're letting that cure, got the fan rolling. It's still a little humid for my liking here, but we gotta get it done. Let's go over. We're gonna work on the tail light. We're gonna put in this LED plate light. Okay, just wiring in the plate light here. So we got this going on. And as you pull this back out, what we're gonna do is tap into the red wire I would think that would be the brake light, but no, it is actually the tail lights for the headlights being on. And then the black wire. So the black wire is going to be your negative or ground, common, and then you've got the red wire here going to the red wire. So black to black, red to red, pretty straightforward. So we'll tape this up, put it back in the harness, and then got a little heat shrink on here and some solder connectors. I'll put a little bit of liquid rubber at the end of this shrink wrap here, and then put it in some 1/4-inch corrugated tubing to get it out to the location on the swing arm. We are all done. This build came together really nicely. I've got the wheel actually back on his truck because he's going to be here in a few minutes. However, we've got the nice stainless steel plate here. The pin glides along, locks into the position, clunk, and enough for the door to open. It's just barely cleared, so that's good though. And then back door drops down. Awesome. And we got a little drop down table. The height they want, just level with the back flap there. And then the wheel fits on top of there. For here, if he wants to swing it out a little bit further, we've got the little extra pit, but yeah, it came together nice. And there he is to pick up his truck.
This is Mark. I met Steve. First, I watched his videos on the luggage, the tire carrier, and we communicated by text and then by phone. And I'm from Michigan, so I drove down here. And
it's great land of Texas.
yes. We spent 5 days here in Texas vacationing and having this installed. Great guy, excellent communication, very detail oriented. Every time I get a text from him, it's so detailed. I love it. I'm gonna enjoy this. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.